So, um, so it's a bit after 2 p.m. I assigned myself a 20-minute break. Um, so there's a question of like, when do you get to do that, or when does the game hand you a break, or hand you either a break in terms of a span of time, or a break in terms of some other bonus or award or reprieve or whatever. And then who decides, who provides that? The game master, or puppet master, or the player, or whatever. Even more so when you have multiple game masters or puppet masters and multiple players all interacting, and where those labels can even sort of fluctuate and blend together. So I pushed myself into this mode of working in this Rose document and putting timestamps and imagining time pressure and attempting to focus on doing the task. And in the process I pulled a couple of things out, but it's like I have all these thoughts on my mind related to all of this. And so it occurred to me, in terms of like my memory of academic articles and so on, there's this term intrusive thoughts. And so this can be extreme in psychiatric disorders like OCD, where people have like an overwhelming number of intrusive thoughts, or even with ADD or whatever, or just in everyday life actually, people can engage in mind wandering, or as cognitive behavioral therapy addresses, like everyone has these sort of like automatic thoughts that come to mind. So, I mean, different people have different amounts of this stuff. Some students in school are known to engage in a lot of mind wandering or daydreaming, and that's of course incompatible with school, where only behavior matters, and since you can't observe daydreaming, it's not relevant or whatever. But you can observe those things if you develop some metacognitive awareness, and you can identify, I'm daydreaming, I'm having an intrusive thought, or whatever. And intrusive thoughts aren't always bad by any means. In fact, daydreaming can be cognitively beneficial, and there have been a lot of articles about that. But there is the question of how to harness that power of intrusive thoughts, or mind wandering, or basically what's called the default mode network. And how do you learn how to use that in combination with doing specific practical tasks, which are supposed to block out the default mode network and those intrusive thoughts. But it's possible to fluctuate between them, just like it's possible to engage in the suggestion that Rose is giving me, which is focus some on writing, or doing this cognitive task of extracting phrases, do some of this easier work of adding items to Rotero or whatever. It's not Rotero. Zotero. This indexing program, citation manager. So, or doing these other things, but like you can do another list of like things you can jump between, and one of those things is pull an intrusive thought, or pull some, I mean, intrusive isn't the right word, but I'm using that because I just looked through all these academic papers that use that term. So, but pull an inner thought or an association, do something with that, talk about it, write about it, mention it, and then shift back into focusing on like some specific other task. So this gets into this fundamental point in terms of Rose's metacognitive coaching. So a couple of times I've seen her apply strategies where she's basically suggesting multiple activities, shifting between them, where one of the activities is meant to provide motivation, energy, focus, and then the other activity is the actual work. And this is an interesting approach to take, especially since, like, for me, a lot of the times my problem is my energy levels go down, I'm not motivated, I'm not sort of engaged, and so it's like, how do you get that mental energy up? And stimulants are one way that's addressed. someone's not focusing on school, prescribe them stimulants. But there are other ways to activate those same dopaminergic circuits and norepinephrine circuits, using the kind of methods Rose is talking about. So, but I think the list of options can be expanded, and then it also needs to be sort of tailored to what a given person's sort of energy levels and sources of inspiration and so on are. But this gets into this question of how do you sort of balance or relate external prompting from other people, and how do they manage their job or whatever, their role, with your own sort of conscious selections, and then how do you balance those, and how does the team or whatever balance those with the inner thoughts that come up, the daydreaming or intrusive thoughts or associations that come to mind, or default mode network inputs into the stream of consciousness, into one stream of consciousness. How do you sort of balance that? Like, do you try to block those out? Do you give them a voice or whatever? So in this document I wrote up with Rose, I mean not with her, but in terms of as part of her assignment, I mean I've been putting these timestamp notes, and I mentioned a lot of these like off-task thoughts, but I've done this in a different way from which I've been doing this on, say, Riz, which is I'm kind of modeling the technique Rose used in her 1 hour thing last night. So I'm trying to break up the lines into shorter sentences or just phrases. I'm bolding certain items. I'm trying not to write walls of text, and I'm using timestamps. Actually a lot of timestamps, more like minute by minute or every 2 or 3 minutes. So I don't know how she's going to react to all of this. I mean, she could be like, wow, that's cool, or something like that about the overall process or particular elements that I include. Or she could be like, this is horrible, this isn't what I wanted, you failed me, all these types of things. And so, I mean, it really is like, I don't know what her actual intrinsic sort of reaction is going to be. And then I also don't know how she's going to sort of make selections based on that in terms of how to respond or what to tell me is next. Meanwhile, I haven't really made much progress on this task. And I do need to get to the city for this meeting this afternoon. And so, but it's like, it's one of these things where I have some flex time, like in terms of when I actually leave. And so this is where it's like I can spend more time with Rose's thing. I can spend more time doing other sort of things like responding to Mark and Riz, or like just doing all kinds of other things. I mean, I could go come up with a list of things to do. I could go sketch things out in a sketchbook. Like, I could do all kinds of things that I might not normally even do, but because I'm standing back here and I'm thinking like, well, what can I do at this time? It gives me more sort of mental space or decision space to work in. And this is one of the things that I'm trying to promote that people do, is learn how to step back and think in terms of a broader decision space. And yet the thing is, what can happen is, like, especially when you do have multiple things sort of vying for your attention, and people who are going to be like, why were you doing that? That was really off task. That wasn't even sort of kind of off task. That wasn't even just your status quo activity. You actually went and invented a whole other activity to do, or you dreamt up a whole other activity to do instead of doing what you're supposed to do. Go to the meeting, select key phrases, all these types of things, or do the web bug that I've got to do, or all these types of things. And so this kind of circles back around to Rose's concept of game players. So it's like, basically, there's a population of individuals, like, you can use the word network. Like, I have sort of a network of people who I work with or interact with in different ways, sort of in my world, and it's not a huge number of people, but it's I mean, it's a set of people, and then some of those people know each other, some of them don't. I've tried to make an effort to like let some people know about other people who I'm interacting with, but it's often hard to do that. Like, how do you introduce somebody to someone who is not in their world? Like, what's the point? And I mean, I find that even like when I talk to people, sometimes they'll ask and express interest about family members, for example. Who are your parents? How are they doing? Siblings, all that. But people tend not to ask, who are the other people in your network, and what's your relationship like with them, and all of that. And it is something to kind of think about. What else? So I'm mentally noting that this video is getting kind of long. I meant to make a pretty short video. I set a 20-minute break for myself, and I've probably burned through most of that. And the motivation or the rationale for the break was in part to get something to eat, but it was also because I was kind of running out of energy or feeling low energy, and it's partly because of just all these thoughts and inner conflict and so on about what to do. And so I am going to, I mean, again, it's like a decision tree. Like I feel like I can make a pretzi just based on what I have in my mind right now, based on pretzis I already made with the figure who's got the multiple arrows coming out. Like, you can take this path or this path or this path. But then that's the thing, like, you, the viewer of this, if anyone's actually watching this far through this, you have a choice. Like, as you watch more and more of the video, you can just hit stop, you can take notes on the video, you can make some kind of a response, you can go watch another video, or you could come up with your own decision tree, like go for a walk, or do some other kind of exercise, get something to eat, contact someone, check the news. I mean, whatever type of thing you might think to do or have in your mind or come up with, you could go do that now. Even though you probably have other things pressing on your attention, and you might even want to finish this video. But that's another thing too, like, you may be watching this and saying, well, I want to just finish the video because there might be something interesting, or I just want to feel that feeling of completion. But you might also just be like, I'm just going to give up on this video. And I mean, that's the thing, like, even with a really well done talk or a well done video, I mean, I've experienced watching something where I'm completely immersed in it the whole time, but I've very often watched even very good videos where I've had to push myself to stick with it, and often I've found something of benefit. But I mean, it's pretty unusual that something is just totally like immersive and it pulls you in. It's fascinating, and I imagine this video is one of those ones where watching it through requires some effort. But that's the question: how to transition to a more interesting video. So more on all this later, and I'm gonna get something to eat.